Welcome back to Reconfiguring Reality. I'm your hostess, Jesse.
And I'm Chash.
I'm Laura,
And I'm the Jericho.
and today we have a guest host, my sister.
Hello, I'm Krista.
And our topic today is depression and anxiety.
Okay, so depression and anxiety. First, I wanted to ask Krista, um, what you have a degree in psychology, right?
I do. I have my MS in counseling psychology.
Which means you are a therapist,
Yes.
which makes you qualified to discuss this topic with us.
Yes, I am not an expert by any means, but I do have enough education to know what I'm talking about and be able to talk about depression and anxiety. So,
And as you say that, I want to lay out a disclaimer for anybody listening to this podcast. None of us are professionals. Do not take our conversation as the word. Please, if you need help, seek help from a professional. So, how do we even begin the conversation about depression and anxiety?
Well, it kind of depends on which way you want it to go, really.
well, I think just beginning a conversation, no matter how awkward and clunky, is the big first step because we still suck at talking about mental health.
Well, because it's such a negative stigma.
So I went to a comedy show last night and the comedian was a woman my age, Gen X, and she made the statement, she made the joke, when we were kids, we didn't talk about mental health, we didn't have feelings. I'd go up and tell my dad I'm cold and he'd say, "No, you're not." And that's kind of where our attitude towards mental health has always been. You have the boomers raising the Gen X kids, and you didn't talk about your feelings. You didn't have feelings. Just starting to talk about it.
Suicide is definitely a big topic, and I know we do want to cover it at one point. And it is a topic that is associated with depression and anxiety disorders. But I don't want to look too much into the suicide statistics in this. I want to focus mainly on um, depression and how to determine, what is depression, where can we go to talk to somebody, what is anxiety, how do I know if I have it, stuff like that. And I know,
It's also the fact that anxiety manifests differently from one person to another, so does depression.
yes, I
And it
mean,
looks it looks different between kids and adults. It looks different between men and women. That even goes as far as those who identify as male versus those who identify as female. It looks different. So, that's where like it gets tricky. And there are people who will say, "Well, no, I don't have depression. I'm just having a bad day," but they're clinically depressed and don't need to be having 30 bad days in a row.
right. I know I looked on psychology.org at the types of
Mhm.
anxiety disorders, and I mean, there's five, seven, eight, nine, eight just on
Mhm.
that website alone.
Mhm. I think everyone in my household is diagnosed with anxiety, but we all have a different flavor.
Huh.
So, my anxiety is part of my PMDD. Andrew has social anxiety. I don't know with Christian if his is just garden variety or what the deal is. But then I would say your kid's got generalized anxiety.
Yes, she does.
See, I have a smorgasbord. I'm kind of proud of it. I have generalized anxiety. I have social anxiety. I have recurrent moderate major depressive disorder with anxiety. I have BPD and I have PTSD.
Oh, you're fun. You
Trash,
I
sound
would
like
think
me.
so.
Trash, have you been diagnosed with anxiety or depression?
Not, I don't think like officially. I mean, we know I have anxiety, and I think I just have like generalized like seasonal depression. But like other than that, no. I mean, I've been on. You get put on the meds that are mainly for depression, but they sit there and they go, "Oh, it also helps with anxiety," and you're just like, "Uh huh." Like you're just like, "Uh huh, sure, let's go with that." But I've been diagnosed with anxiety, but like nothing like specific. I mean, I remember going to the pediatrician with my mom and literally looking at the pediatrician and being like, "Yeah, I have like mini panic attacks every day. This is just life." And she's like, "That's not life. Like, you shouldn't be panicking like to brush your teeth or shit." Like,
So
um,
you might actually, instead of anxiety, have a
mm,
panic disorder, which
Which is
falls
a
under the umbrella of anxiety disorders, but
yeah.
it's a more specific
mm-hmm,
diagnosis.
Jericho, are you
maybe.
diagnosed with depression or anxiety?
I am not.
Krista.
And I know I suffer from depression, but it's not depression disorder. It's just like they have very specific things in here to be diagnosed with
Mhm.
depression disorder, and um, I have my days, but they're not
They're not like how I manifest my days and just
right.
hide in my hole.
Right.
Mhm.
Yes. And I can
Well,
always
I think
tell when Jess is going through it because she escapes to her bubble and that's how she copes with it.
I like my bubble. My bubble is safe. Do you know how many diamond
Mm.
paintings I've gotten done?
I can only imagine.
I'll send you a picture of the last one.
well, I think people need to realize too is that depression's it's an emotion, right? So, like every emotion, it affects everyone differently, and it affects people differently depending on how they handle emotions. Like with men, there were so few cases for such a long time because we were all told to be strong and
Hmm.
don't cry and to walk it off and all that kind of stuff. So they may have been suffering, but they just don't let it out. Like I'm not a person who suffers from depression or anxiety often, if almost ever. However, I've recently begun uh, to see a therapist because only after many years of bottling up my emotions and just kind of getting through life and raising my son and all that kind of stuff, I basically ran out of things to do. I didn't really have a plan for my life. And then I met Lorelai, and suddenly, after decades of walling myself off and not allowing emotions to control me, I suddenly am in this relationship with somebody for a long period, and the expectation is to continue that relationship. So as I've started to peel back those layers of armor and allow myself to more or less be human, I'm suddenly now suffering these things of great anxiety and stresses at work and other things that I haven't felt for years because I didn't allow myself to feel those things.
You're letting yourself be vulnerable. I think it's important though to also make the distinction that part of depression is that it is an imbalance of serotonin and dopamine in the brain, which is why antidepressants work because they change how your brain processes those hormones and helps like the reuptake of them so that you're not feeling down and having all of those symptoms all the time. So just keeping that in mind too. So yeah, it is an emotion and you are feeling something, but there is also that chemical imbalance. And that's important to me to make sure there's that distinction because when you're talking about depression and anxiety, you start to have the medication talk. And there are so many people that are just like, well, I'm not taking meds for my mental health. I'm not crazy enough to be on meds.
I'm
And
afraid
I
to try
always use,
meds because of my adverse
well,
reaction to medication.
Yeah, well, you're a little bit different. But I always make the argument of I play devil's advocate, and this is my favorite thing. If you have heart disease and your doctor says, take this medication to protect your heart's an organ, take this medication, you don't even question it. You take the heart medication. Your brain is an organ too. So if your doctor says, hey, you have an imbalance of hormones in your brain, take these medications and it'll balance it out and you'll feel better. Why are we questioning? If we wouldn't question a heart medication, why are we questioning a brain medication? And again, it all goes back to that stigma that, you know, if you have depression, anxiety, any kind of mental health, oh, you're crazy. Well, maybe I am, but I'm going to do something about it and I'm going to talk about it and I'm going to take medication for it.
Didn't we have an uncle that was discharged from the military because of crazy papers, and he was proud of it, proud to show
Oh,
those
yeah, he
papers
was
off?
so proud of his papers. I'm crazy and I've got papers.
See, that's I've come to the realization, and part of the reason why I've been in my bubble is I was naive thinking that, oh, okay, I'm going to do this and my BPD is going to get better and my depression's going to get better and I'm going to be able to get off my meds and be a normal, productive member of society.
And by this, you mean your therapy?
Yeah. So there is no cure. There's no medication. The medications I'm on are supposed to help me with my anxiety and my depression. Not the biggest uh, issue I deal with, which is something that is you can't medicate for because it's not a chemical imbalance. It's not a mood stabilization.
The the
It's
P.
not
What
something
is
that
it?
can be fixed.
The PB.
BPD, a borderline personality disorder. It's pretty much a
BPD.
trauma. Yeah, it's a trauma. Pretty much means you had a really screwed up childhood and your brain just doesn't work properly anymore, and there's no way to fix it. So I'm dealing with I can't just take a happy little pill and be normal. I actually have to like work at it. My biggest stigma I had against medication is I was never honest 100% with my therapist or the person doing the evaluation. So they weren't getting all the information that they needed. So I was always misdiagnosed. Well, if you're not bipolar medication, of course, is not going to help
Right.
with anything. So they would sit there for 2 years flipping around the medication. And so for some people, especially like me, when I had everything all sorted out, and they're like, okay, well, this is going to help your depression. This will help your anxiety. They're like, but it's not going to fix the issue. It's like, okay, because I flat out told my psychiatrist was, no, I don't want to be on any medications unless you know it's not going to make me a drooling idiot. Like sometimes it's done. Because depending on the type of psychiatrist you get or the type of therapist, they don't always listen to the person. But like my psychiatrist, I knew my meds weren't working as well. So I was like, hey, I think I need to up them. And she said, okay. And we upped them. And things were okay for a little bit. And now we probably have to reevaluate and up them again because I've been hiding in my hole.
Right. And that's where it gets tricky as a therapist is first of all, you have your patients that aren't honest with you. And so how do you help if you don't know the big picture? But and I will say I used to be the same way with my medical doctor, with my PCP. I wasn't always very honest, which is probably how I ended up diabetic and with blood pressure issues. And now I'm on medication for that for who knows how long, probably the rest of my life. But also, like, that idea of, you know, just like anything else, it takes some playing around with it to get the right dose. And then just when you have it figured out, your body goes, "Oh, well, I'm used to this now, so I'm gonna go back to baseline." And you have to play around with it again or play around with different kinds of medications. I'm diagnosed with ADHD. I was given Ritalin for the first medication that I tried, which was great. It worked great. That morning dose, that first dose I had to take was fantastic. But why they think that they should have people with ADHD have to take a second dose of medication in the middle of the day and think it's going to be successful, I'm still not sure. I never took that second dose. I even had an alert on my phone. It would go off, I'd turn off the alert, I'd keep doing what I was doing and never take the meds. So we changed my medication to Concerta. One pill once a day. Worked great. Raised my blood pressure. I can't take it anymore. So, it's just a lot of that trial and error and seeing how does it affect first the whatever it is you're trying to treat and how does it affect the rest of your body.
Well, and also,
I
how do
think
you know if it's going to work if you're not going to try it?
right. It just
My
it gets really frustrating and exhausting. For a while, I was, like, not taking anything for my ADHD, and I noticed a big difference. I could not focus on a task from start to finish to save my life.
my question is what happens when your body gets so used to the medication that you're taking the highest dose and you need to continue to go up?
Then
What happens then?
you start to cross-wean and you try something else in a different family. So, like, medications for depression, there are SSRIs and then there are I forget what the other term is because I don't do the prescribing. That's only a psychiatrist will do the prescribing. So I don't know what the different families of medications are. But if you're taking an SSRI, then you start introducing a different family of medications and start weaning off of the SSRI. And that's a really important thing too. You can't just cold turkey off of those medications. A lot of people do. The withdrawal symptoms are horrible, and you can actually do a lot of damage to your body just stopping the medication. And then, then I'm even more depressed than I was before. Well, I wonder why. Like you stop taking your meds and your body now hates you. So,
Mm.
it does take, we did a lot of trial and error and we have found something for me that works for my ADHD. I'm taking it to kind of be a booster to my medication for my anxiety and my depression, but it works for ADHD too.
Well,
So
that's
now I
convenient.
can finish tasks. Hmm?
I said, oh, that's convenient.
Yep. So I'm prescribed Zoloft. I've been on Zoloft for years for the depression and anxiety that comes along with my PMDD. When I cycle, there I get hit like that where I'm rock bottom depression and super high anxiety at the same time, which is not fun for anyone around me. My kids call it stabby. We added Wellbutrin just to kind of give it a
Oh,
boost because I've been going through some stuff and depression's been worse.
uh,
It's
well,
been fantastic. I feel
but
better than I have felt in years.
they put me on Wellbutrin to try to quit smoking, and oh, I was like a murderous little squirrel. Whew.
On the Wellbutrin.
Yes.
I think I remember that actually.
Oh, it was so bad.
See, I was just prescribed Wellbutrin in high school, and then I just stopped, and now I think I'm on. I don't know. I get the generic crap, but I think I'm on Zoloft or
So
Lexapro, one of the two.
My son was on Lexapro for quite a while.
Zoloft's generic name is sertraline, something like
I
that.
think that's what he takes now.
Yes,
Mine's whatever.
that's
Crispy.
Lexapro.
Okay, then I'm on Lexapro.
My new job has me learning all of the generic names of all the medications, so that's been helpful.
Yeah, then they had me on Seroquel and all these mood stabilizers and antipsychotics, and
Which would have been great if you had manic depression, but
yeah.
BPD is a completely different thing.
Well, it helps when you're actually honest with everything.
So,
Yeah.
so you guys know that I love to go to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC website.
Yes, Laura, I've seen a running theme. When you could use CDC, you use CDC.
Yeah. Now look, it's like one of the first when you search for something in the internet, that's one of the first responses, or what the heck is it called? The results.
One of the first websites.
One of the first results is the CDC. And I do like that the CDC has this on the website. The following information is not intended to provide a medical diagnosis of major depression and cannot take place of seeing a mental health professional. If you think you are depressed, talk with your doctor or a mental health professional immediately. This is especially important if your symptoms are getting worse or affecting your daily activities. That's our little blurb right there for the entire podcast too. Okay. And this is interesting because it's from a part of the CDC that says tips from former smokers. So apparently there's a correlation between smoking and depression. I had no idea. So
I would imagine there's
I
probably a correlation between anxiety and smoking on the other end of it, on the quitting smoking, not like why you started smoking,
right.
oh
but
god,
quitting.
quitting smoking.
Because I would imagine the withdrawal from nicotine
What, Jess?
would.
I keep thinking like now thinking of being like, oh well, I could quit smoking, and then just like all of the pain and the suffering that goes along with quitting, and how you want to just rip your hair out and your anxiety's through the roof and you can't even get out of bed in the morning.
Yet, the last time I quit smoking was actually the easiest. And I don't know what changed. Maybe knowing that I wouldn't be able to live where I'm living now.
How
But
old were you when you quit for good?
me,
Yes.
42.
That may have something to do with it too. Because your body changes, your hormones change, everything changes.
Yeah. And I mean, yes, it was hard to quit because I didn't necessarily want to. And yes, I miss smoking, but I don't miss the nicotine. I don't miss the cigarettes. I miss the sitting down alone outside, taking deep breaths and controlled breathing. Laura,
You
why
can
don't you do
You
that
can
without
do that
smoking?
without a cigarette,
Yes,
right?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Except for the fact that now I'm like, computer. You know. Yeah, I know. I do. I need to
They
buy
have these
my.
amazing little inventions that like they're portable computers.
I want a laptop. I keep being told that I don't need one, but
Everybody needs a laptop.
I wanna get furniture for outside before I start going out there because I want to actually sit outside.
Because yeah,
But
you could sit outside, get some vitamin D, get those UV rays that
get a
help
couple squirrel
combat
Yep.
feeders and watch
depression.
the squirrels play. Okay, so depression is more than just feeling down or having a bad day. When a sad mood lasts for a long time and interferes with normal everyday functioning, you may be depressed. Symptoms of depression include, everybody ready to tick these off in your own heads? Feeling sad or
Uh,
anxious often or all the time. Not wanting to do activities that used to be fun. Feeling irritable, easily frustrated, or restless.
uh-huh.
Ha- having trouble falling asleep or staying asleep. I've
Uh-huh.
never had the problem of falling asleep.
That's like the one symptom I've not had.
Oh, it sucks. It really sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been moments like time to time, but not consistently.
That one actually fits. Like, I have somebody in mind who has insomnia, but that actually fits because I know he has
In
depression
fact,
too.
one of the side effects of Wellbutrin is insomnia. For
Oh, I
everyone but
know.
me, I've had less trouble sleeping since I started taking it. I think it just slows everything down enough for me that I can actually like shut the brain off and go to sleep.
Eating more or less than usual or having no appetite. Experiencing aches, pains, headaches, or stomach problems that do not improve with treatment. Having trouble concentrating, remembering details, or making decisions. Feeling tired even after sleeping well. I have that, but I think that's from my sleep apnea. Feeling feeling guilty, worthless, or helpless, and thinking about suicide or hurting yourself. The next section of this, I love the CDC. It gives you so much information. The what causes depression, and this is interesting too. The exact cause of depression is unknown. It may be caused by a combination of generic, biological, environmental, or and psychological factors. Everyone is different, but the following factors may increase a person's chance of becoming depressed. So we can actually be prepared to know whether or not our next of kin are depressed because Having blood relatives who have had depression is on there.
Mm-hmm.
Experiencing traumatic or stressful events, such as a physical or sexual abuse, the death of a loved one, or financial problems. So, in other words, the entire world is suffering from depression. And no, I'm sorry, that was not a good joke. Um, going through a major life change, even if it was planned. Having a medical problem
Mm-hmm.
such as cancer, stroke, or chronic pain. Totally see it.
Mm-hmm.
Taking certain medications or using drugs and alcohol. Who gets
There's
depressed?
a whole
Sorry, go ahead.
distinction in the DSM-4 or DSM-5 for like a lot of these like depression and anxiety. There is a distinction of you have the symptoms, but they're not related to a medical condition or medication or substance abuse. Like they actually have like a specific distinction for that because depression due to a medical condition or medication or substance abuse, those are their own diagnoses.
Huh. Interesting. I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Yep.
In general, about 1 out of every 6 adults will have depression at some time in their life. Depression affects about 16 million American adults every year. Anyone can be depressed, and depression can happen at any age and in any type of person. So that's definitely, you're not alone. There you go.
Mhm.
16 million Americans. Many people who
I
experience
wonder what
depression.
the numbers are worldwide. Or yeah, worldwide. Like I wonder what the number would be. I'm gonna look that up.
Do that, please. That would be great. Many people who experience depression also have other mental health conditions. Anxiety disorders often go hand in hand with depression. People who have anxiety disorders struggle with intense and uncontrollable feelings of anxiety, fear, worry, and or panic. Well, yeah, we're going to definitely get into the anxiety disorders because it's interesting to me how many there are. Hey, Jess,
Yes.
did you
Ooh.
know that smoking is more common among adults with mental health conditions?
I mean, it wouldn't shock me, but I also grew up in a household where both my parents smoked. Two of my siblings smoked. My uncle smoked that came over all the time. My grandpa smoked that came over all the time. So it was common for
Uh-huh.
me to see adults smoking.
About 3 out of every 10 cigarettes smoked by adults in the United States are smoked by persons with mental health conditions.
Doesn't surprise me at all. You have all that anxious energy, you've got to do something with it. So, according to the Worldwide Mental Health Foundation, an estimated 950 million people worldwide are affected by mental illness. It
Dang.
doesn't specify just depression, but just mental illness. And mental health issues being the leading cause of suicide account for over 800,000 deaths per year.
Holy shit. And it's probably because
So,
it's not talked about.
and it's absolutely because it's not talked about. If we talked about mental health more and we talked about depression more, it wouldn't make depression stop, but more people would seek treatment and, you know, you'd start to feel better. Again, I take it all back to your brain's an organ, just like your heart, your lungs, whatever. And if you're having trouble breathing, you go to the doctor and you talk about it and you get, figure out why you can't breathe. If you're having brain trouble and your brain is just telling you all kinds of whacked out stuff, talk about it because I guarantee you, you're not the only one whose brain is like going a little haywire.
Panic disorder, agoraphobia,
Mhm.
social anxiety disorder. Selective mutism. Separation anxiety disorder. Specific phobia. How
Huh?
many phobias are there? It said specific phobia. How many phobias do you think there are?
I'm looking it up.
A lot.
Over 500 named phobias.
500 named phobia. Okay. Of course, we know agoraphobia is a fear of being in situations where escape may be difficult or embarrassing.
I thought that was like where you can't leave your house.
Aha. Untreated agoraphobia can become so serious that a person may be unable to leave the house. Yes.
Yes.
But the
But
fear
it's
itself is.
I have the definition right here from the DSM-5 if you'd like it.
Go ahead.
A fear of places or situations that trigger fear or helplessness is singled out as a particularly common fear with its own unique diagnosis. And it ties with social anxiety a lot of times. Um, so it's that fear of that one specific place where, like, you've got like the person who just can't go to the mall because they just can't go to the mall. Like, I have this serious fear. It triggers this feeling of helplessness and I'm terrified, and the mall, I can't go to the mall. So, if I'm going to go shopping, I've got to do like Walmart or whatever. But it can get to the point where you don't leave the house.
The CDC, oh no, this is psychology.org says a person with agoraphobia experiences this fear in two or more of the following situations: using public transportation, being in open spaces, being in enclosed places, standing in line or being in a crowd, or being outside the home alone.
Mm-hmm.
I would hate that, being agoraphobic. Oof.
That makes me wonder if maybe my kids got a touch of agoraphobia.
I mean, I'd rather be at home. Yeah, sure, but I have a fear of um going to a new building alone, like entering a new building alone. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Is it a fear or is it just uncomfortable and out of your comfort zone?
I, uncomfortable with a touch of fear.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
The fear of chickens. Sorry. There's a list. There's an alphabetized list of phobias on healthline.com.
Jericho,
And
what are you afraid of?
Nothing.
I call bullshit.
I was gonna say there's gotta be something. And it doesn't have to be like a debilitating, like phobic kind of fear, but there's gotta be something that just makes you kind of go,
Let's find names for our fears, guys. I'm afraid of deer.
I
Does
already
that
know
have a name?
mine.
Okay, so afraid of deer. Let's
It's like
see.
the dumbest fear. But yes, I am afraid of deer.
I'm
Other-
not as afraid of birds as I used to be, by the way.
I have a fear of spiders, which is arachnophobia, and I
Mhm.
have this paralyzing fear of pigeons.
Of what?
Pigeons.
Pigeons. Okay.
The only
Well,
fear I ever had when I was
Elphiphobia is the fear of
Wait,
deer.
say it again because it was being talked over.
Elaphiphobia, ELAFI phobia
That's a
is
fear
the
of deer.
fear of deer.
Jericho, what were you saying?
I was
Sorry.
saying, yeah, I don't have any fears. The only fear I had was when I was young, and I used to be afraid of needles because of the stuff I went through when I was young. But after becoming a diabetic in my older days, it's not like an actual fear anymore. Like I don't have anxiety about it or whatnot because I have to get stabbed all the time.
You
So I
just don't
just
like being in pain.
well, being in pain, I'm not afraid of pain though.
Right.
But it's but I will say, even though I do not fear them, my body remembers the fear, like almost like a
Mhm.
trauma response. So whenever I go to a doctor's office or a hospital or any place that has that sort of sterile smell to it that reminds me of the doctor's office, um, my heart will start beating faster. My blood pressure will increase. My doctor
Mhm.
actually thought I had high blood pressure for a long time until they started having me test it when I was on my own with an arm cuff,
Mhm.
and they're like, "Why does it only go up when you're here?" And I'm like, "Because I don't want to be here."
Your body, so there's actually a book that about this, about your body remembering trauma, and your body will store that trauma even if you don't give it a second thought for the rest of your life. That's very true. And there's so much like that I can relate to with what you said about being a diabetic and having to do finger sticks every day, how like now there's not really that fear of needles. I used to be, you can ask Laura, I used to pass out just at the
Yeah.
talking about the fact that I had to have blood drawn. Now I still can't watch them do it, but it's like no big deal. Here's my arm, go ahead and take my blood because I get blood drawn every 3 months. Um, so I definitely have mentally adjusted to that.
And you said you're not afraid of birds anymore, or as afraid of
Not
birds.
as much.
I'm not afraid of clones
Ravens
anymore.
ravens and crows are really cool, and
They
so they've
are.
kind of redeemed the species.
Yeah, when
So
I decided to stream, I wanted us to be a murder of crows, but we didn't think Twitch would do murder very well.
but that's what a group of crows is
That's what they're
called.
Yes, I
called.
know, but they still wouldn't look at it that way. That's how we ended up a kaleidoscope of
A
So
butterflies.
fe-
so it, I love tattoos and I love piercings, but
Mhm.
I cannot get a shot.
Aw.
It's
Like
a
I
completely
will
different
pay.
thing.
But most people think I'm weird because of it.
Yeah, how can you
Well,
be
I'm
afraid
like
of needles
you.
with all of
So,
those tattoos?
Yeah, exactly.
well, because they're not stick and poke tattoos.
Because I'm picking for them to poke and prod at me.
So what?
There's a fear of knees.
Okay,
Knees,
Knees, like that part of your leg that bends. It's called
really?
geniophobia.
what's the fear of pigeons?
Fear of pigeons.
I don't need to know what that is called. All I know is they're dirty, dirty, disgusting creatures.
They're air rats.
Hey, do not
And
be
the ones
insulting the rats.
downtown and the ones downtown have like 0 Fs to give.
Chat, do you have any
Okay.
fears?
I can't think of anything. Me personally, I know like I have a anxious attachment style.
A what?
Mhm.
Anxious
Anxious
attachment
attachment.
style. So I get really close to people and just get anxious that people are gonna leave, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, I remember having that conversation with you when we first met.
Mhm.
It's like
It's
when you
fear
have
of
BPD and
abandonment and all that
you
shit.
have a favorite person. It really fucking sucks.
Yeah, kind of like that. You just get attached to a lot of people, and
Fear, like you said earlier, like fear is an emotion, right? So depending on how you handle your emotions, fears, you could be afraid of something but not really be afraid in a traditional sense of something. Like, for me, like when I was younger, I used to have this I can still kind of do it now as I'm older, but if I slept in a certain position, I'd always have nightmares.
Huh.
But unlike most people who have nightmares, like my nightmares were more annoying than they were scary because I could feel the fear during the nightmare, but I was still conscious during my dreams, and I would be like, this is stupid. I have no reason to be afraid of this. But I could feel my body and my heart racing and that intense sensation like phasmophobia that they try to create it with the audio with that like white noise effect. The
Mm.
same thing. Like I would hear that ringing in my ears and I'd force myself to wake up from these nightmares, but not because I was scared, because it was just really annoying. And it was the only way to make it stop.
What type of fear response do you guys have?
Like,
Depends on the situation.
Well, I know back in the day when I had that fear of needles that then we figured out was really actually a fear of the tourniquet, I would get like that anxiety response of the racing heart, cold, clammy hands. I'd get really lightheaded. Um, our mom likes to tell the story about when I was 9 and went to get my tonsils out, and they went to put the IV in me, and she turned around and I had So I was sitting in one of those chairs with like a desk on it, and I had passed out and slid underneath the desk onto the floor,
Mm.
um, because I was terrified of getting that needle put in me. Um, so that's kind of how I respond.
It like I said, it depends on the type of situation. Like if it's a fear of spiders, I curl up in a ball, I freeze, and I cry. But if it's a clown coming at me, I'm swinging.
See, and
It depends.
I'm not afraid of clowns anymore. I just find them really annoying. When it comes to deer, I have a freeze response. But when it comes to like jump scares, like if somebody were to grab me and scare me, I have a swing. When Jericho scares me, I yell at him.
I say all kinds of bad words.
I
In my
love that.
defense, though, most of the time I walk in the room loudly banging, playing a YouTube video, and shouting at her before I actually enter sight, and she still goes like, "Oh, he's gonna be."
The core symptom of panic disorder is recurrent panic attacks, an overwhelming combination of physical and psychological distress. During an attack, several of the symptoms occur in combination. They have like rapid heart rate, sweating, trembling. Krista, you felt like this when you got your nose pierced.
That was adrenaline,
Um, feeling of
but
shortness
that
of
is how it felt, yes.
yeah, shortness of breath, chest pain, dizziness, feeling of choking. I've never seen that one. Interesting. Numbness or tingling, chills or hot flashes, nausea, feeling detached, fear of losing control, and fear of dying.
Well, yeah, because you feel like you're having a heart attack. You feel like you're dying.
Huh.
My lips get real tingly when I'm having a panic attack.
Did you know that social anxiety disorder used to be called social phobia?
Mhm.
Do we have anybody in this group that has social?
I do.
Do you?
Yep.
Is it large groups or just groups of unknown people?
Both. And it also depends on the situation, the people that I'm with and or around, and it also depends on how like my mood's been during the day. But for me, it's more of a fear of rejection to a point too.
A fear of if I may, a fear of uh
Rejection.
looked down on.
Yeah, like I know I'm different. I knew it. I've accepted it, and I've gotten to that age where it's I really don't care, but I'm very comfortable at being at home. Like I was proud of myself. I went out of the house today and I ran to Cub. I had a panic attack, but I still did it.
Where did you run?
But I went to Cub. Cub is a grocery store up here,
Oh,
but
thank you.
so I went there. But last weekend I went to Half Price Books. Eddie went to Target. No issues.
Huh.
So it just depends on the situation, how everything is mentally, but um like I can usually feel when a panic attack or an anxiety attack's coming on because I have like these little tells and usually they just go away. I calm down. But when I can't, it w- it does feel like you're dying. I almost pass out half the time because
Oh.
I'm hyperventilating. My heart's pumping, I'm sweating, I'm shaking, and most of the time when that does happen is my medication's not going to help anyways. So usually if it happens at work, I have to drive, and when if you've ever tried to drive with a panic attack going on,
Mhm.
it is not the safest thing.
Nope, it's an adventure. I don't know that I necessarily have social anxiety, but I do know that being in large crowds for a long period of time definitely drains my energy. And I'll get to up to a point where I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm done. I need to get away from people.
Why is selective mutism considered an anxiety disorder?
Because more often than not, when someone engages in selective mutism, it is because of anxiety.
Hmm. Interesting. Is it only in children?
I don't know.
I think it's more common in children, but there's probably cases of people who have selective mutism when they have anxiety attacks and stuff like that.
Okay, so this says it's an anxiety disorder where a person is unable to speak in certain social situations, such as with classmates at school or to relatives they do not see very often. It usually starts during childhood and, if left untreated, can persist into adulthood.
Hmm.
And I have a child sitting on the floor looking at me because
Mhm.
they have a touch of selective mutism.
So, anxiety disorders are the world's most common mental disorders, affecting 301 million people in 2019. I don't know if that's, well, I guess that's the world because this is from WHO, the World
Hmm.
Health Organization.
Right.
More women are affected by anxiety disorders than men. Symptoms of anxiety often have onset during childhood or adolescence. There are highly effective treatments for anxiety disorders, and approximately 1 in 4 people with anxiety disorders receive treatment for this condition. It's
I
estimated.
think that people are more willing and comfortable to talk about their anxiety than they are about their depression.
Well, I've been told also usually when you have depression you have anxiety, or when you have anxiety you have depression.
Hmm.
They kind of go hand in hand together.
Mhm. This does say, in fact, that 301 million people in the world had an anxiety disorder in 2019.
Wait, just 301 million people? That's like less than I thought.
4% of the global population.
You mean for once I'm in
As
the top
diagnosed.
10% of something in the globe?
Yeah.
Damn,
Look at
I'm
us.
special.
Yeah.
We're all special. Yay.
Although highly effective treatments for anxiety disorders exist, only about 1 in 4 people in need receive any treatment.
And I wonder how much of that goes back to it's more socially acceptable to acknowledge and admit that you have
Mm.
anxiety, but there's still the stigma on treatment,
Barriers
regardless of what you're dealing with.
barriers to care include lack of awareness that this is a treatable health condition, lack of investment in mental health services, lack of trained healthcare providers, and social stigma. Yep. That social that social stigma needs to go away.
It does. We need to start talking about it.
And
Like, I don't
that's why we are.
understand why, we talk about erectile dysfunction like it's like a totally normal everyday conversation topic, but then someone says something about depression or any kind of mental health, and everyone's like, "Ooh, we can't talk about that."
You also have to realize that erectile dysfunction affects the men and the geezy old men who make all the laws and who sit there and think that they're important and what they say matters. So if they sit there and say that, oh, this is a little off topic, but that when a school shooting happens and all of a sudden it's all about rights and gun laws, well, it's not just a gun discussion, it's also a mental health discussion, but heaven forbid we're too scared to actually say what needs to be said.
Well, it's
Yes.
because, how dare he shot up the school? It's mental health, so it's obviously negative when it doesn't need to be. The discussion
Mhm.
of mental health does not need to be negative.
Well, the problem is, so you touched on, you both, well, all of you touch on several topics that become an issue. So it's not purely the discussion of mental health in and of itself that's the problem. The problem is no one likes to discuss anything that has to do with a disability. Any disability, whether it's one that you can see from the outside or one that's on the inside, is taboo. The culture, especially a Western culture, is that you need to be a fit, sound mind and body. If you don't, you're at risk of losing out on opportunities, being treated differently, seen as lesser, or seen as incapable of controlling your own faculties. People live in fear of getting picked up by the cops and being put on a 5150, or losing their job, because jobs can do that. A lot of states are will to work states, and so you can be not officially let go for that, but they can make excuses to get rid of you. So there's more to it than simply the matter of it just not being something that people just don't want to discuss. And like for the case of erectile dysfunction, it's not because it's something men want to discuss and therefore it's just like anything that sells well is going to be plastered everywhere, right? So sex sells, so it's everywhere. Like we argue over books that have descriptive passages in them, and how young should a child be exposed to that. But then you have TikTok, Instagram, and OnlyFans plastered everywhere that any kid of any age can basically see with little to no effort. Why is that allowed? Well, it's allowed because it sells. That's the bottom line to it. And they target, again, like with men in this, the erectile dysfunction, because men, they're basically providers and they're basically baby makers, right? So if you can't be virile for your potential mate, and the only thing left you have is money, so how do you solve the problem? Well, you take the money and you throw it at the problem. So, I mean, it's an easy sell, right? So it's like with women, if you notice when they target women for drugs, it's always anxiety medication or stress related or depression, or how to, to handle feminine products better, and this one feels nicer, lasts longer, whatever. They're not going to target your mental health because they're not going to make a lot of money on that when it comes to just random things, right? You don't see bipolar commercials constantly. You don't see erectophobia commercials constantly because there's nothing really to sell there. So it's got to be marketable, to be thrown into your face. And as far as like the media side of thing goes, you know, even though statistically you'll see numbers that display like men are large by uh, victims of violent crimes and activities far more than women are, but all you ever hear about is women's self-defense courses and women carrying mace and women. But you never hear anything about men, even though we're the ones who are constantly getting killed, murdered, raped, all these things, because it doesn't sell. No one wants to look at the big manly protectors, even though that may not be the stereotype in reality anymore. That's the narrative that we play out in the Western society. Therefore, no one wants to see that, right? It's a movie no one wants to see. It's like the WNBA. There's people out there who like it, but the NBA gets all the attention because that's where the big flash is. That's where the stars are. So that's what people talk about.
We need to talk less about basketball and more about mental health.
More about what? You
Mental
cut
health.
out.
Mental health.
But
Well,
it doesn't sell. That's the thing. Where are you gonna sit there and watch what, I don't even know if Dr. Oz is around, but an hour of Dr. Oz talking about depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, body dysmorphia, all this kind of stuff.
Well, I
It,
would, because I know
you
people
would, but
feel,
I
who are
mean, the
affected by
majority
all
of
of that.
America,
Yeah, absolutely.
until I was like 18, I didn't even know my mom was bipolar because it was like a deep, dirty family secret. Maybe in 20 years, it'll be a more talked about subject because it's not going to be as taboo. But growing up how we did, it was, you didn't have feelings, you shove them under the rug, you cry, oh, or what are you crying for, I'll give you something to cry about,
Shut up,
or
or
at
I'll
least
give you
that,
something to cry about. Right.
yeah, and stuff like that. So for us, it's we have to get out of the stigma of not talking about it. Like I can sit there and like I'll have a bad day and everybody's like, "Oh, what's wrong?" And it's just like, how do I explain? I don't know. I just don't feel happy.
Oh, there are mornings when I hit my lowest with the depression that, I'll just cry for no reason, and Jericho will come in and ask me what's wrong, and I'll say I don't know, and he knows that it's I don't know. I just
Mhm.
feel like crying. I don't know.
Yeah,
So
or like I can sit there and go and hang out with friends one day and then the next time they ask it's like, "Oh, I don't want to leave my house. No. No, I don't want to leave my house." And
I've
then
been
I just
trying.
cancel.
I've been trying to get you to do a puzzle with me online for weeks and weeks
I've
Dude, I haven't even touched nothing
and
on the
weeks.
computer. I throw a show on. I watched Has Been Hotel and Hell of a Boss. And I restarted watching Grey's Anatomy.
Oh,
So, I mean,
uh, I haven't gotten through it yet once, but I'm working on it.
yeah, I stop at a specific part
It's a
and restart.
lot. I'm very blessed with friends who understand mental health. And because I'm really good for, I'll make plans with someone, and then the day of the plans happen, and I just can't. And I'm able
yes.
to reach out to that friend and say, I can't. And my friends will say, well, do you want me to come hang out at your house, or do you just need space in general? So I'm grateful that I have that. I also I'm real big on, and I've always been really big on talking about mental health all the time. We have regular mental health check-ins in my house. My kids understand, they'll talk about mental health. And I've gotten to the point where our boomer mother has opened up to me about her struggles with mental health from the time she was in high school
Hmm.
until now and how she still struggles. And she's talking about feelings and mental health. And my mother is one of the least warm, fuzzy feelings kind of person I've ever met.
Hmm.
So, it definitely makes a difference to talk about it. The
I tell you,
more we all talk about it within our circles, the more they start to talk about it too.
I tell you what. 10 years ago, I wish I knew more about body dysmorphia. What is it? Body
Dysmorphia,
dysmorphia.
body
Yeah,
dysmorphia,
yeah. I
body
wish.
dysphoric disorder.
Yeah, I would have loved to have known more about it. I would have been. I think I would have been able to process things better and understand better when my child approached me with that,
Mhm.
if it was more talked about.
Right. And gender dysphoria and all
Hmm.
of that.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, but even like I find it incredible to know too that it's not just trans people that have body dysmorphia.
Yeah, so I actually did a presentation on body dysphoric disorder, and yeah, and it's a very interesting disorder because just like everything else that's in mental health, some people it's just their entire appearance. Other people it's just one particular feature. And it can be debilitating where like they don't leave the house, they don't talk to people, they don't like they won't look in a mirror. Um, it's interesting. And then you end up with depression and anxiety to go along with it because you have all of these, messed up beliefs about your body. And then so it contributes to depression and anxiety, and it just is a big snowball.
Is there anything else that you guys want to talk about with depression and anxiety? Anybody? Anybody?
Have you
Nothing.
tried being happy?
Yes! I have
Just
tried being
smile and be
happy.
happy.
Oh my god,
Just
tell me to
smile and be
smile, see what the
happy.
fuck happens.
Although I will say, especially those who struggle with seasonal affective disorder and that seasonal depression, a UV light, just one of those little UV lamps, because we're basically plants. A UV lamp helps so much because it helps to replace some of what we're not getting because the sun goes down so early. I had one until my cat chewed the wire, and then it didn't work anymore. And it made a big difference.
Thank you again for checking in on Reconfiguring Reality. Comment, like, share video, do all that fun jazz.
Subscribe. There will be information in the description below if you guys need to reach out to somebody. Remember, we are not professionals, but there are professionals that you can get in touch with easily if you need someone to talk to. We hope everybody has a great week, and we'll see you next time on Reconfiguring Reality.
Bye!
Bye.
And Krista, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Krista.